Space and outer realms are very much a concept in the world of the Elder Scrolls. Look up while playing most of the games and you'll see the sky shift between clear blue days and dark nights, filled with stars that form constellations, as well as the two moons, Master and Secunda. Dwemer orreries reveal other planets and celestial bodies that surround the world. So, you might have found yourself thinking, how does it all work? What is outer space like in the Elder Scrolls? The thing is, space works very differently in the world of the Elder Scrolls compared to ours, and as we all know, Elder Scrolls lore can get very, well, complicated. But with the release of Starfield right around the corner, what better time to talk about how space exactly works in the Elder Scrolls? Let's begin with a general overview / brief history lesson. The cosmos of the Elder Scrolls are an amalgamation of different planes and realms of existence, forming a universe known as the Aurbis. The Aurbis was created by the mingling of the two primordial forces, Anu and Padme, and encompasses basically everything. The Aurbis is split up into three fundamental parts: Mundus, Oblivion, and Aetherius. Mundus is the realm of mortals, and you can think of it as the solar system of the Elder Scrolls. At the very center of it all is Nirn, the world where Tamriel and other continents are located. Mundus was created way back in a time known as the Dawn Era, after Lorkhan, the god of mortals, tricked the Et Ada, the original divine beings, into sacrificing a large portion of their power in order to create the world. The core group of Et Ada, specifically Aedra, that poured their power into Mundus are known to us as the Divines. Their essence and planes of existence assume the form of planets that are positioned around Nirn in a geocentric model, meaning that Nirn is quite literally at the center of everything. The planets may appear to be spherical, but in reality, they are infinite and beyond comprehension. Mortal beings are only able to see and understand them as floating spheres. According to Dwemer orreries, Dibella orbits Mara, which orbits Zenithar at the same time. Meanwhile, Stendarr orbits Julianos. Some of the stars of the constellations are actually the planets. For example, one of the eyes of the warrior constellation is actually Akatosh. What would it look like to be on one of these planets? Seeing as we can travel to the planes of Oblivion, it's not so far-fetched to assume that one could walk around on the planes of the Divines as well. Like how each individual Daedric Prince's plane reflects their personality and attributes, the same could very well apply to that of the Divines. If this were true, then for example, Kinnereth's plane might be a peaceful realm that reflects her qualities as the goddess of wind and nature, while Julianos' plane could reflect his qualities as the god of wisdom and logic. ESO allows us to travel to a realm known as the Spilled Sand, supposedly the realm of Alkosh, the Khajiit interpretation of Akatosh. Speaking of Oblivion, at the same time, there was a group of Et Ada that refused to pour their power into creating Mundus. You might know them as the Daedric Princes, and the masters of the planes of Oblivion. Oblivion completely surrounds Mundus, and like the Divines, its thousands of planes would appear to the eye as planets, as their true forms are impossible for mortal minds to comprehend. The distances between them are incomprehensibly vast to mortals as well. When one looks up at the night sky from Nirn, they are actually looking into the expanse of Oblivion. In a general sense, Oblivion is the closest thing to space in the Elder Scrolls. Moons are essentially smaller planets, though are also infinite in size, as some infinities are smaller than others. Many cultures regard moons to be minor gods or attendant spirits for larger gods. Master and Secunda are, of course, the moons of Nirn, and it is popularly believed that they are the withering corpses of Lorkhan, who was killed by Akatosh and had his body split in two after his trick was discovered. The Khajiit believe in a third moon known as the Dark Moon, said to be the missing body of Lorkhaj, the Khajiit interpretation of Lorkhan. There is a moon that orbits the planet of Arkay, known as the Necromancer's Moon. This is the ascended form of Mana Marco, the most powerful lich in Tamriel's history. One of the endings of the Elder Scrolls 2, Daggerfall, allowed the player to give an artifact known as the Totem of Tiber Septim to Mana Marco, which he used to channel the power of the Mantella, the power source of Numidium, in order to turn him into a minor god in the form of the Necromancer's Moon. A few quests in ESO actually allow you to travel to some of the moons, or at least aspects of them, like the demi-plane of Jode. Beyond Oblivion is Aetherius, the realm of magic and what is essentially the Elder Scrolls' version of heaven. The prime architect of Mundus, the Et'ada known as Magnus, fled into Aetherius once he realized that he and the others had been tricked by Lorkhan. In doing so, he tore a hole in Aetherius, creating the celestial body known as the Sun. Another group of the Et'ada known as the Magna Gay followed after Magnus, creating smaller tears in the sky, known to us as the stars, which form the constellations. Magic leaks into Mundus through these tears, which mortals are able to utilize in order to cast spells. Like how one looks at Oblivion during nighttime, one is witnessing the magic of Aetherius during the day. Aetherius is home to several realms that serve as an afterlife. When a person dies, it is believed that their soul slips through into Aetherius. It is here that we find places such as Sovngarde, the far shores, and the sands behind the stars. You can basically think of the Aurbis as an egg. Mundus is the yolk, Oblivion is the egg white, and Aetherius is the shell. And what's beyond Aetherius? A black expanse known as the Void, where Anu and Padme come from. The Void is also the empty space in between the planes of Oblivion and the planets of Mundus. Whenever Daedra are banished or destroyed, their forms are sent to the Void until they manage to regain their bodies in Oblivion. To regular mortals, the Void is deadly and would completely tear them apart. You might have heard a thing or two about space travel being possible in the Elder Scrolls, and you would be absolutely right in assuming that that's a thing, to a certain extent. For the most part, space travel is like traveling through dimensions. When you go through a portal, you're basically traveling through space. There are portals to Oblivion, but there are also portals to Aetherius. The most obvious one is the one that takes you to Sovngarde at the end of Skyrim. The third edition of the Pocket Guide to the Empire mentions expeditions made by the Reman dynasty in the First Era through the Imperial Mannonauts, and a group known as the Sunbirds of Alinor in the Somerset Isles, that attempted to travel to Aetherius by piercing the veil in between it and Mundus with massive amounts of magic. They were eventually disbanded due to the fact that traveling to Aetherius for extended periods of time simply proved to be too difficult and required too much magicka. The Battle Spire, a testing ground for candidates of the Imperial Guard, can be considered a kind of interdimensional spaceship that floats within its own realm in the Aurbis, known as a slipstream realm. A portal known as a Weregate allowed individuals to travel to and from the Battle Spire onto Tamriel. It is believed that dragons were a means of traveling between dimensions as well. Within the Battle Spire, we can find the skeleton of a dragon, known as Dragon Papre, the mount of an Imperial battle mage known as Samar Starlover. The Starlover's log details how he planned to escape through the Weregate with Dragon Papre after the Battle Spire was invaded, though he only returned to find a corpse, and was thus doomed to die alongside his comrade. The biggest question, of course, is would it be possible to physically travel through space? What if you go up above Nirn's atmosphere and out into the great unknown? Well, the only sources we have on this topic are out-of-game ones, most notably works by former developer Michael Kirkbride. Tiber Septim's sword meeting with Cyrus the Restless mentions spaceships propelled by bags of slowed gas, and the ability of even being able to breathe and survive in the void through sheer willpower. His most famous work, Coda, takes place in the 5th Era, where Nirn was destroyed by a massive cataclysmic event known as the Landfall. Groups of Dunmer and Khajiit fled to Masser on spaceships and created a sprawling futuristic civilization. There is a bunch of other crazy and in-depth space lore, but that's a topic for another day. Minor celestial objects like shooting stars and meteorites are fragments of matter and magic from Aetherius and Oblivion that manage to make their way to Mundus. Welkin stones and Varla stones found in Ayleid ruins are shards of enchanted meteoric glass. The rock Bar Dao that hovers over Vivec is said to come from the void. There are also space cores as part of a portal crossover, but I think their canonicity is, debatable. You might also be wondering where the auroras you see in Skyrim come from. Like Earth's magnetic field protects the planet from solar radiation, magical phenomena protects Nirn from outside forces, as described in the celestial style crafting motif from ESO. Auroras are also described as Kyne's lights in the improved Emperor's Guide to Tamriel. Seeing as space doesn't follow the same rules as our world, what about other phenomena? Would the tides not be drastically affected by the presence of two moons? How do seasons occur if Nirn doesn't orbit around the sun? And how does the night sky change if Nirn stays in place? This is honestly really speculative territory that we just don't have any good answers for. We see that Mundus at least somewhat obeys the laws of physics, like the concepts of gravity and heat. Perhaps there are more genuine scientific reasons for the way the universe works. Maybe Nirn really does orbit around the sun. There is even evidence to suggest that the stars in the Elder Scrolls are similar to actual stars that are spaced out from one another, in that they assume the shapes of spheres and aren't just flat tears in the sky. Major misconceptions about the way space worked were widespread in our world for a very long time. Who's to say that that's not the case in the world of the Elder Scrolls?